Professor Brujan is driving her car with her daughter Manon. They are having a light conversation as Manon teases her mother. Out of nowhere, a truck smashes into their car on Manon's side. In a different place, a shootout occurs between a group of traffickers and the European Police Department. Lieutenant David Hoffman and his wife and partner Sarah Hoffman are holding their ground against the traffickers. Sarah suddenly gets ambushed from behind. In a blink of an eye, the man breaks her neck and throws her into the water. David dives immediately after her, but she is already gone. The murderer reaches for a gun and shoots David through the water. Hurt and devastated, David can only bellow in frustration as he watches the murderer escape. He tries reviving his wife, but she is already gone. Now David is struggling to continue his life without his wife. He tries to drown himself in the bathtub, but miserably fails. The chief of police, Miller, visits him at his house. He had not been answering his phone for days. She checks up on him and tells him about the recent case they have concerning the body of a girl they found covered with markings, similar to their other cases. He goes with her to the morgue, where the body of the girl is being kept. The mortician informs them that the girl had no legal documents that can identify her. He thinks that she was an illegal immigrant. There are no signs of violation on her body, aside from the markings under her eyes. The girl has brain damage, but no visible trauma in the physiology, making him suspect electrocution. Miller empathizes with him for Sarah's untimely demise. She asks him to go back to service and bring justice for his wife's murder by putting Nikolov, the man behind the trafficking operation, in prison. She introduces him to his new partner, Lieutenant Marie Becker. David takes pictures of the corpse of the girl for investigation before leaving the morgue. Manon has recovered from the car accident at the beginning. Her face and body are treated with the utmost care, and she does not seem to have had an accident. Her mother, Professor Brujan, watches her as Dr. Jacques, the doctor who reconstructed her body, assists her. Clara, the nurse assigned to Manon, enters her room and is awestruck by Manon's appearance. Manon looks at herself in the mirror and is surprised to see her appearance. She feels like a different person, but is still glad for her recovery. David and Marie walk together to the parking lot. She tries initiating conversation to get acquainted with. He finds out that she is the niece of Charles Becker, high-ranking intelligence officer, and immediately thinks that she only got the job because of her connection. She explains that she went through all the processes, just like everyone else. The two of them arrive at a bar, where David knows someone who smuggles illegal immigrants. He finds Yuri and confronts him about the girl in his case. He shows Yuri her picture, and he immediately recognizes her. Her name is Tatiana. She and her sister Alina went missing 2 months ago. He then asks him about Nikolov, but Yuri has not heard about him for a long time. David demands that he should report something to him as soon as possible. Yuri recognizes the markings on Tatiana's eyes and brings them to a man with similar markings under his eyes. The man had been missing for quite some time, until he returned with no memories of himself. Meanwhile, Professor Brujan is telling foreign investors about their service, telesurgery, and how it can be made possible over long distances via hologram. Manon watches her mother through the window in the next room. Professor Brujan excuses herself and walks up to her daughter. Manon expresses that she wants to go home already, but her mother explains that she still needs to stay for a while, in order for her to recover. Manon tells her that she is experiencing confusion and does not feel like herself. Professor Brujan comforts and reassures her. David returns to his office, while Marie inspects Tatiana's corpse again. She goes to his office and informs him that there is nothing unusual about Tatiana that they do not already know. They go through her personal belongings. David inspects a sketchbook containing vulgar and somewhat disturbing sketches of people. Yuri is able to track down Nikolov's location. David and Marie are waiting for him to arrive. He is starting to get irritated at Yuri after a long time, with no results. Yuri assures him that Nikolov owns one of the vehicles in that place. David sends him away to try and investigate Alina. After a long time waiting, Marie starts a small conversation. She asks if he has a wife or children. David is silent for some time, before answering her shortly. He just says he does not have a wife or children, and asked her about her life. More time has passed, and Nikolov finally shows up. David instructs Marie to stay in the car, and he immediately gets down, loading his gun. He strides toward Nikolov. Meanwhile, Marie calls for backup. David points a gun at Nikolov, ordering him to surrender himself. Nikolov does not move for a moment, then quickly hurls this helmet towards David, giving him a chance to run. David chases after him through the car factory, until they both fall into the metal disposal pit. He is able to corner Nikolov and send him unconscious. Manon tries getting used to her situation, but she is still struggling with her mind. She finds comfort in talking with another patient, a child named Clemens. The girl asks her about the markings under her eyes, and she explains that those are scars from her accident. Miller, along with the European Police Department, arrives at the car factory and escorts Nikolov. She assigns Marie for interrogation, while taking David off the case. David cannot believe her decision, but does not argue any further. Miller and Marie are now back at the station. Marie enters her office and tells her that the interrogation is not leading anywhere. Nikolov just keeps fabricating his stories. She argues that they already found Nikolov's fingerprint on Tatyana's body, which should be evidence enough. However, Miller is disappointed and wants more from the interrogation. Marie tells her that she will try again. David is watching Nikolov from the CCTV, acting all smug. He decides to enter his holding cell to confront the man himself. He starts beating up Nikolov before Marie arrives and stops him. She removes his cuffs to help him up. Nikolov takes this chance to steal her gun. He starts threatening David with Marie's life, but David remains unyielding, knowing that he cannot make any negotiation with a deceased hostage. David locks the door and waits for his chance to shoot Nikolov. After he puts down Nikolov, David goes to Miller's office to surrender his badge and gun. Marie is traumatized by the encounter. She thought that she was going to lose her life. She is also mad at David for making the situation escalate. Professor Bruggen takes her daughter on a boat ride for a change of scenery. They cruise around Paris as she tells her about her father. Manon listens to her as she tries to remember her stories. Her mother notices that she looks unhappy and asks her if something is wrong. Manon lies to her and just says it is cold. David returns to his house exhausted. He remembers his failure to save his wife back then. What happened earlier with Nikolov and Marie did not help his mental state either. He is starting to lose reason and starts taking it out on the objects in his house. Manon and her mother are having dinner on the cruise ship, enjoying the night away. Her mother tells her about her favorites, but she still cannot remember and did not even like them. She suddenly has a painful flashback of the accident and of different sketches she did in the past. Professor Bruggen brings her back to the hospital. Manon undergoes a procedure in an electronic machine, operated by her mother, that tampers with the person's memories. David is reminiscing about the days he had with Sarah. The doorbell suddenly rings, and he is greeted by Marie. She wants to talk to him about what happened. She found out about David's past encounter with Nikolov and what happened. She convinces him that she can help him, he just needs to trust her. However, he tells her that she can do whatever she wants, and that he does not need her help. Miller inspects Nikolov's body at the morgue. The mortician informs her that Nikolov was shot in the knee by David in their last encounter. It did not appear on the autopsy of this body, making him conclude that it was not Dmitry Nikolov that David put down. The real Nikolov appears in David's bathroom and attacks him. They brawl, taking the upper hand alternately. Nikolov throws him into the bathtub and beats him there. Nikolov puts his guard down as David stops moving. He starts smoking a cigarette when all of a sudden, David rises up and continues fighting him. This time he overpowers Nikolov, but Nikolov stabs him in the knee. David thinks that Nikolov's ghost came back to haunt him. This confuses Nikolov and demands that he tell him who he eliminated, but David has already passed out. Marie enters his house quietly. When she realizes that it is silent, she pulls up her gun and starts looking for David. She hears a noise coming from the bathroom and throws the door open. David and Nikolov are already gone, but she knows that something bad happened. Seeing all the shattered glass and blood on the floor, she calls it in, and the investigation team arrives. After reviewing the CCTV footage, they realize that Nikolov must have had a twin brother, the one David put down. Nikolov brings David to the medical facility of Professor Bruggen. David is strapped onto the electronic memory machine. Nikolov tells the professor who David is. Bruggen is shocked and immediately tells him that he should release David right away. Nikolov demands that she plug him into the machine, find out what he did to his twin brother. Nikolov wants to erase David's memory, since he made her work possible, and he threatens her if she does not do as he says. Professor Bruggen starts operating the machine. David starts getting electrocuted painfully. His memories are starting to get erased as the professor watches it through her monitor. Professor Bruggen wakes Manon up the next morning. Her nightmares are getting worse, but she assures her that her results show that she is getting better. She hugs her daughter and shoots her nape with an anesthetic. The professor wheels her out of her room and into the elevator. She brings her out to the topmost floor of the facility to hook her up to the mind machine once more. Meanwhile, Marie returns to the bar to try and talk to Yuri. She finds him, shot in the head in one of the pods. David wakes up on the sidewalk without his memories. An officer finds him and drives him to the department building. Marie runs up to him, showing her concern, but not being able to remember her, he just stares at her blankly. She follows him intently before another officer stops her and informs her that they need to run a series of tests on him first. Clara sees that Manon is not in her room. She goes to the top floor of the building and finds Professor Bruggen operating the machine for Manon. She points out that the professor had been using the machine too frequently on Manon, and it might affect her health. The professor still does not back down. She is desperate for her daughter and is willing to do whatever it takes to keep her. Back at the police department, they discover that David received electrical shocks like Tatyana's. This caused him to lose his past memories. Charles Becker arrives at the station and tells Marie about the technology the military created. It is used to digitalize human memory and allows them to store it. They call this chrysalis. It can also be used to erase and create a memory. Nikolov stole the machine several months ago, and this immediately becomes a threat if it falls into the wrong hands or the wrong organization. They want Marie's help to trigger David's memories by reminding him of his horrendous memory of Sarah's demise. Marie brings David back to his house and stays there for a while to assist him. He looks around his house and his pictures with his wife, but nothing is triggered. She does her best to answer his question and tells him about Sarah. He suspects that she wants his memory, like everyone in the department. Marie gets him up to speed with the case, showing him footage of his and Sarah's encounter with Nikolov and all the relevant information about the case. The two of them arrive at Professor Brugin's facility and demand to talk to her. Marie confronts her about the machine, but she evades the question. They take the elevator to someone else. Clement sees them and says that David looks like Manon because of the markings under his eyes. This immediately raises suspicion. Nikolov enters Manon's room and beats Clara up. He forcibly takes her away. This aggression triggers her memory, causing her to fight against him. He accidentally lets her go, and she immediately locks the door on him. David and Marie see this from the hallway and run after him. David fights Nikolov, even though he does not remember him. Having his mind not clouded by emotions any longer, David wins against him. Clara finally tells Manon the truth about herself. She shows her the electrocution memory machine and her real body which experienced the accident. Professor Brugin is furious with Clara for bringing her there. Manon's real body is severely damaged and will not survive much longer. Manon hits the alarm button and tries to get away. She goes to the top of the building, wanting to end. David finds her and empathizes with her. He tells her that her real name is Alina. He successfully stops her from ending her. The whole case is covered up by Charles Becker, which does not amuse Marie. She meets with David for the last time. He decides to live his new life with Alina as her guardian.